Also, shout out to the listeners at McMurdo Station down in Antarctica. Thank you for tuning in. And today on the program, it's going to be great because we actually have a guest in the studio. And, well, his name is Sir Joe Barna.
How you doing there, Rob? Sir Joe Barna, wow.
Yeah, I thought you got knighted or something.
It almost sounds like I'm important.
You are. You are definitely important. Here, just pull it in a little bit closer. A fist away from the microphone is what we learned.
All right, there we go.
There you go. Now you sound like a real broadcaster.
Look at that.
So, Joe Barna, if you heard the name before, if you heard me play some Joe Barna music on this show before, or if you're just not familiar, Joe's like the guy, man. I think of jazz, and I want to talk to somebody about jazz. Well, who got the jazz? Joe's got the jazz.
I have some of it.
But, I mean, I guess a big question, though, because you were really, really active. You were doing so much in the local music scene. I mean, you were trying to, like, make a new scene that didn't really exist here for jazz. And it seemed to be really working. You were doing things on, like, Wednesday night in downtown Troy and, like, actually getting people to come on out. And as we know, those weekday nights are really, really tough. But then I was like, where'd Joe go? Haven't seen Joe around. What's Joe been up to? So where you been, Joe?
Well, I've been a lot of places, mostly home. But no, back in 2023, I did about 220 gigs.
Damn.
And I don't really get hired as a sideman ever. Very rare. Maybe for some musicals or something like that. So I booked all of those gigs, supported all those gigs promotional-wise, marketing-wise, had to find the funds to subsidize all of those gigs, had to book all of the musicians, make travel plans if they were coming from out of town. I was basically working a slow week. I would put in about 80 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm also a single dad, and I was working a job. So by the end of 2023, I could feel a little bit of exhaustion that I had never felt before. I think part of it is just getting older, and part of it was being so emotionally exploited that I mentally and physically could not sustain it any longer. And by March of 2024, it got to the point where I just couldn't even convince myself to pack my car anymore. It got that bad. And I think, and this is going to sound weird too, I think what really set me over the edge was the awards phenomenons happening in the Capital Region.
I've heard of some award shows out there, yeah.
And I'm not going to say in a good way or bad way. I don't think anybody did anything malicious. I don't think anybody from any of those situations did anything to me. I don't hold anybody accountable except myself. I think that I was a little jaded from all the hours I put in 2023, and for the first time in my life, I think I set an expectation for myself that wasn't realistic moving forward into 2024. And when that wasn't met, I was disappointed in myself, to be honest with you.
Sure.
My creativity, my drive was like absolutely destroyed. And I just felt like I couldn't find a reason why I was doing this anymore, you know? And so I took basically, you're right, I was playing every night. I had Monday nights at 518 Craft, I had Tuesday nights at the Twisted Fiddler. I was doing occasional Wednesday nights. I was playing Thursday nights at Tattoo. And then I was playing almost every Friday and Saturday. I was running a concert series, a guest artist series. I was also teaching. You know?
I know, yeah.
It was, you know...
you had a full plate.
If I can give any advice to anybody coming up on the scene right now, I would say find your balance because, especially as you get older, because from what I've learned is nobody's entitled to anything.
That's right.
Okay? Nobody's better than anyone else. I mean, I'm talking on maybe a human level.
Yeah, correct.
You know, and I think that when you work that hard, you have to put so many other important or valid parts of your life aside, like health and fitness, sleep, family, spending time with friends, being on the couch by yourself and just watching a movie, recuperating, sleeping. I just feel like, man, I didn't do any of that. I just went. And what happens is you start to get trapped into this hamster wheel of, if I'm not working, I'm failing. And that's not true. Sometimes you're failing because you're working.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you feel like you're chasing your own tail.
Yeah.
A little bit. But yes. Now, also, if you're just tuning in, we were talking to Joe Barna. Definitely the man for the jazz scene. He's always the guy that I go to and think of. But also, I don't think that we mentioned you're a jazz percussionist, a jazz drummer.
Yeah, drummer, composer, band leader. Those are kind of the three. Booking agent.
Yeah, for real.
I've come to terms that I am the drummer in the band, and that might lead into our next topic. Who knows?
That's right. Well, yes. Well, you got time to stick around so we could talk about.
I have plenty of time. I'm not going anywhere.
All right, we'll play a little music here. We actually got one of your tunes in the system here. This one's called "The Purpose."
Oh wow, I love that one.
Yeah, this is a good one right here. This is Joe Barna. This is the local lunch. This is RadioX. We'll be right back. We're still here in the studio with Joe Barna, the jazz musician, the booking agent, the one man. Like he does it all, man. And we were just chatting a little bit about how it can be dueling on the soul, and But I think you're kind of pulling yourself out of a little rut that you were in, and I think new things are going to be on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, definitely coming out of probably the biggest growth spurt of my life, in probably every aspect of my life, as a father, as a friend, as a musician, as a band leader, everything. And I think, like we talked about in the earlier segment, a lot of that was due to what was going on in 2023. But what really sent me into that kind of like tailspin of thought was touring with my own band for the first time for over a month, back in last May, end of May of 2024 through June of 2024. That was the single biggest undertaking musically that I had ever been courageous enough to try to pursue, and it broke me pretty quick. It broke me pretty quick. So, I mean, if you care to talk about that, I'd be happy to share like what my experience was.
Definitely. I mean, touring is certainly an experience that musicians, you long for, but sometimes they don't really know what's going to come with it and how it made you feel. So what was your experience?
My experience was, it was mostly positive, but I realized about a week in to the tour that, and I realized it. I'm not saying anybody else would feel this way. I don't know. I didn't ask, but I felt like an imposter. I felt like a fraud, like,
Why though? I don't understand.
The band was better than I was. The band was better than I could play.
Really?
Oh God, they were some of the best musicians in the world, man, and some of the most creative and in the moment geniuses. I would consider those other three guys. I would consider them geniuses. You got, I think, either two or all three of them won Fulbright scholarships. They're all very accomplished New York City musicians. They're all accomplished band leaders in their own right, and I'd spent the majority of my career up to that point, after getting out of school in 2004, I'd spent the majority of my life as, I would say, an administrator, booking gigs,
right,
doing all the details in accommodating those gigs, cultivating a scene, getting posters made, doing interviews, writing papers, like doing all this other stuff. And I neglected to remind myself that I was still the drummer in the band. So I would say about a week in, when we started playing some of these pretty exquisite venues, real venues, man, like these are not bar gigs, these are concerts. And those guys brought it, and I got about 5, 6, 7 days in when I couldn't go any further with my own playing, and they kept going further. I felt like I don't belong here, and I still had 3 weeks to go. So it was crushing to my soul. It was humiliating to myself. Nobody else did this to me. Nobody did this to me. I did it to myself. After going through what happened in 2023 and then walking away from all my gigs in March of last year, and then taking on this enormous, like grandiose task of facilitating a 4-week tour where I'm the leader, and having to get on that stage every night and be creative and in the moment and bring it. And I just felt like I felt broken. And then by the time we got to Nashville, so we were headlining for 2 nights at Rudy's Jazz Club in Nashville. It was one of the most prestigious jazz clubs in the country. And normally they don't do 2 nights. They'll give you 1 night, 1 slot. Mm-hmm. They gave me 2 nights. I still don't know why, but they did. So we got up there the first night, and I went in to hear the band before me. And the drummer before me is a big Nashville drummer, a touring jazz drummer, plays with Kurt Elling, Lady Antebellum, and about 3 minutes into hearing him play, I went outside and I almost started crying. I was sitting on the bench outside by myself. And I said, I do not belong here. This guy was so good. I was sitting there going, what am I going to do after this guy gets done and I have to play a half hour after him? So the first night was rough. Mm-hmm. Then the second night, before we played, Stacy Dillard, my saxophone player, had us in his hotel room, and he basically read us the riot act. If you don't bring it tonight on this gig, I'm going to hold everybody accountable. And, in his own way, and he was right. He was absolutely right. But that's absolutely the best the band had sounded the entire month. That one night. And I have it on a hard drive. It's all recorded, multi-tracked. I haven't listened to a note of it yet. I'm kind of scared.
Sure. But there's always going to be someone better. That's just something that, I've seen you play, and every time I've seen you play out, and of course the musicians that you bring are always top notch, but I've seen you be the best drummer on a stage before. You know what I mean? I've also doing performances myself. Hell, we got roped into doing a show where Reeves Gabrels, formerly David Bowie's guitarist, and now with The Cure, actually played before us. And yeah, my guitarist is thinking the same thing. How am I going to follow that? But you just go up there and do it.
Well, I think, Rob, honestly, I think it was more of, I'm going to tell you a little anecdote, okay? Mm-hmm. This was back in 2000. There's 2 different instances with my teacher, John Riley. Back in 2003, I brought a recording that I did, a bootleg recording. I had him listen to it. And he listened back to it, and he said, oh, it's nice. It's nice. I was like, what do you suggest? He goes, well, he said to me that your writing is beyond your playing, and you can't accommodate your own songs. And he said, I would recommend stop playing your own music, focus on the drum set, learn other people's music, gain some knowledge, gain some content, come back out about 4 or 5 years or whatever after you've done that and play your music again. So I listened to him, and I formed my band in 2009, okay? And then I still studied with him, okay? And then I went back in 2000. I went for a lesson with him down at his house in 2000. I think it was 2012, 2011, 2012. And I played for him, and I asked him, you want to talk about humbling? I said, so John, after the lesson was over, I said, so what do you think of my playing? And he said to me, I really, really like your passion. And I said, oh, okay. I said, not really what I was asking. He goes, I know. And I said, oh, okay. So what do you think? And he said, do you really want an honest answer? And I said, yeah, I would love an honest answer. And he said, okay, I just want you to know that you asked, and I'm going to be completely forthcoming with you. And he said, I think you've made a career on your bravado, not your playing. He goes, people get intimidated by you. You have a presence, you have an aura, you have a way of speaking that people don't want to deny you, even if you don't deserve it. And he goes, if you were to move to New York City right now, there's nobody down here that's serious that would take you seriously. And he's right. He taught he taught, and he's been around all the greatest drummers. He's played with Stan Getz, John Scofield, Dizzy Gillespie. Like, he was just letting it out on the line. And so, I mean, I started crying, obviously. I was heartbroken.
Yeah, I could see that. That almost made me cry.
It was terrifying.
Yeah.
I had to come to Jesus in that moment. So I go to leave the lesson. This is the coolest thing that's happened to me as far as a student-mentor relationship. I went to leave the lesson. He opens a door. I go to pay him his money, which is pretty substantial. And sometimes I get emotional telling this story, so I hope you'll give me a little space. But
you got it.
He put his hand up to the money, and he said, I'm not taking your money. And he goes, if you want to repay me for this lesson, do it with your success. Yeah, man.
No, that's deep.
For someone that didn't really have a dad, who
right.
To have this guy say, I want to see you do something phenomenal, and then that would be my payback. It was cool, man. It was pretty cool. And so that's what I'm saying about, I just talked to him for the first time in like 10 years the other day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had to call him on the phone. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I was afraid of the drummer that played before me in Nashville. I should have been him. You understand?
Gotcha. Yep.
That's what John was saying. You know what I mean? Be that. Don't be what you've already been. Be better. Be better. And I had spent most of my career just being an administrator and being a booking agent and making sure I was always playing and always getting other musicians playing, and I was always on a stage and I was always active, and I didn't always take into account that I am the drummer and I have accountability on that stage at a level that most people don't, especially in the situations I was in. And when we went on that tour last year, I realized that that's the first time it sunk in. It took that long of what John was really saying to me. He's like, now you're in the big leagues. You wanted to be on these stages. You thought that you could be there, and now you're there, and you're not them. So it flipped my world upside down, man. I realized I wasn't that hip. I wasn't as good as the gigs I was on. And that's what I would say to a lot of guys. Just because you're playing a lot doesn't qualify you to be on that stage. I mean, a lot of people think because they're playing all the time that there's some bad dude. I'm telling you, I know a lot of guys gigging a lot that aren't so bad.
Right,
know? So,
yeah. Well, we do got to play some music here real quick. We will have a little bit of time
cool.
if you got some more
Let's
minutes
talk
in
about
you.
some stuff that's coming up.
Cool, let's do that. Joe Barna, everyone. Man, no, definitely, that is some deep stuff right there. It almost makes me think like, I don't know, man. Maybe jazz is a little just too highbrow or something, because us rock and rollers and stuff have it a little bit easier, I think.
It's a different. If you don't have the stomach for it, don't enter into this realm, because every single note you play is under a microscope.
Wow. Imagine that. Yeah, that's why I do punk rock.
You need a drummer?
Yeah, exactly. We got you covered. We're going to play a tune right here from Matt Miraboli and Allison Jacobs. This one's talking about love. It's RadioX. We still got a little bit of time here in the studio with Joe Barna. Thanks, man, for really opening up. I do appreciate that. Man, it really, well, it answered the question. I said, where you been? And that explains it, man. Now, that's a lot to swallow.
Well, I took some time to myself, got a job so I could support myself. And then right around November, early December, I started game planning for what I was going to allow myself to become, and what I was going to stop allowing myself to stop doing that was prohibiting me from becoming who I believe people believe that I can be. Because sometimes we don't believe it ourselves.
Sure.
But now I have to trust that these people know better than me, because they're on the outside looking in. And when you're on the inside, it's a very emotional experience. So my New Year's resolution was to get everything together I've been neglecting, start caring more about myself, my health, become the drummer that I know I can be if I want to be. So I've been doing about, at least 2, but sometimes 4, 5 hours of practicing every day. I stopped gigging. I'm practicing in the morning. I'm practicing in the afternoon. I take a break, and then I practice at night before I go to bed for about 2 hours. And I'm working about 50 hours a week too. So it's a lot. And like I said, I'm a single dad. We homeschool. It's a lot, but I'm finally at the point in my life where I'm not going to allow myself to be a shell of myself anymore.
Yeah. I didn't even know you were, dealing with all of that.
Well, you have to, man. You have to protect yourself. You have to put on a facade, because, look, it's the art of war.
Yeah.
If you're weak, look strong. If you're strong, look weak. You have to play this game to an extent. Otherwise, you'll get absolutely decimated.
Yep.
You won't be able to handle anything. And as far as internal conflict and having low self-esteem, I mean, I if anybody has it worse than I did, then I pray for you, because I've only gone on stage and left that stage a few times in my entire life, feeling like I left it up there, like I actually did my job. You know what I mean? It's looking back on things and just feeling like a complete fraud it's a very humbling experience. And it's, whether it's true to somebody else, it's true to me. It doesn't matter what they think. I have to get over that. So
Right.
I also want to give a quick shout out, if you don't mind, to my good friend Chris Garabedian, who I'd never really spoken to before. He's a great drummer. He's a tailor, a good guy. Last April, he sent me a direct message on Facebook saying, "Hey, brother, I'd like to get together and talk to you." And this was out of nowhere. I've never called this guy on the phone. I've never talked to him really, only in public a couple times. And he took me to lunch, and he talked to me, and we left. He took me to lunch again, like a couple weeks later. We talked. All of a sudden, I'm like pouring my heart out to this guy and like crying in front of him and stuff. And he's a pastor. I didn't know he was a pastor. I didn't know he started a church. I didn't know much about his personal life, but I would say if any single human being has saved my life, it would be him. And he's got me back on track, and he's got me believing that I'm worthy of being on this planet and of accomplishing these goals I have in front of me. So without him, man, I think I'd be, I'm afraid of what I would be right now if he didn't send me that message last April.
Well, I'm sure glad he did.
Yeah, he saved my life. This is not easy, man. This interview is not easy right now. I wanted to do it. Now I'm like, I'm a little, I'm holding a lot back right now, man. This is not easy, brother.
I hear you, man. Well, we can't smoke cigars in here, so I can't do the Larry.
No, I know.
But we do only have a couple of minutes left. Anything else that you wanted to get out there and say?
Well, 2 things. One, I want to thank you and Art for allowing me this avenue to express myself and to be a part of what's going on here. I wrote for you guys for a year, and I'm going to probably have my first article out again in a year, in April. I needed a year off from everything I had to. My head was too clouded. I was jaded.
Sure.
Also, I found myself starting to get angry at people for nothing, and I'm not that guy. You got to really give me a reason. And it got to the point last March where I didn't even need a reason. So I knew, okay, I got to get away from everybody before I lose everybody. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
So
You know what's even tougher, though? Realizing it yourself.
it's hard.
Yeah.
That was hard. But I'm collaborating with you guys to put on a concert. I'm gonna do a concert with my band. Hopefully at the end of March. We're thinking possibly the Hangar on the Hudson.
It's a good spot.
We'll see what happens. Keep looking out for that. The other stuff that's really good, which I'm very excited and very humbled by, is that I'm getting to perform as a band leader with my own band at the prestigious Smalls Jazz Club in New York City on April 3rd. I never thought those words would ever come out of my mouth. I was told I would never be allowed to play there. And all of a sudden I have a gig with my own band headlining there, and it's It's scary as shit. but it's live streamed all over the world. So anybody that has a computer can watch the concert. That's going to be Thursday, April 3rd. I want to thank Spike Wilner. I worked for him in 2014 as the door manager at Mesro and as the bar back at Smalls. So I know a lot about those clubs. I have a history. That Friday, the 4th, I'll be in Oneonta at one of my favorite clubs ever, B-Side. Wayne Carrington is the proprietor, and he's been a blessing in my life. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we're going to play on April 5th. We are playing at the SUNY Albany Jazz Festival under the direction of Bill McCann. This guy is putting on one of the absolute largest concerts I have ever seen a human being put on. I can't even believe he would take this on, but he is a visionary and he believes in this. And the cool thing about this, I think, except for my band, I don't know, I saw the lineup once, but I think except for my band, everybody's local.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I live here, but my whole rest of my band lives in New York City. Right. But I think we're the only non-local group that is performing there, and I think there's 16 bands. So shout out to Bill McCann, man, for being able to take on a task that massive and get the funding and put the spotlight on the people that live here and the people that have sweat for this region in the 518. He's a saint for doing that, and I love that guy to death. So kudos to Bill McCann, man.
And kudos to you, man, because you put a lot of sweat into it as well over the years, no matter what. So we do appreciate you, and I appreciate you stopping by. Got to get back, pay some bills here real quick. But
I feel you, brother.
It's been a pleasure, brother.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.